Good morning, my Florida Garden Escape channel. I'm so happy to have you guys here. If you're new here, welcome. We're happy to have you. So today is going to be a little different. As you guys see, we're out here by the tumblers. We are getting ready to move worms from one tumbler to the other tumbler. And I'm going to show you how I go about setting up the empty tumbler that we just finished emptying. Excuse me. So I'm going to show you the process that I take of setting up our other tumbler for the worms to go back into, because it's time for us to rotate them from one tumbler to another. So I'm going to go through with you guys today, showing you how I go about getting this all set up, how I go about moving them. And we're also going to go over some great different tips that you can do with your kitchen scraps and wood ash that I have here. So let's go ahead and get into this, because I'm super excited to show you guys this whole process. This has been a learning curve for me, and I have finally got it down packed, and I'm so happy to share it with you guys on how this goes about. So let's go ahead and dive in. Before we do, go ahead and hit that like button down below and hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that bell so that way you don't miss out on our new videos. If you've already done these things, you guys are amazing and you guys are awesome as always. But let's go ahead and get into this. So I'm first going to show you our one tumbler. As you guys can see, it's pretty well all broke down. We mainly just have a lot of the eggshells in there. And if we go digging through there, you'll definitely find the worms in there. They're just really buried in there deep. I've already rotated this around, so we'll kind of go through and get the worms transplanted from this one into this one over here. Now when I open this one up, you're going to really notice how it's very empty. We've emptied a lot of it out. We've used it for starting new seedlings, doing compost tea and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and get this stuff added in here, and I'm going to show you guys first things first. Alright, so first things first, we have here our kitchen scrap compost that we use inside the house. I'm going to quickly open it here and show you guys what it looks like. As you guys can see, we use tea bags, potato peels, eggshells, pretty much all your daily kitchen scraps, like your lettuce, tomatoes, banana peels, things like that. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take a couple of scoops of this, and we are going to actually put it in a pot like this that has holes at the bottom, so that way the worms can get into it and eat on the compost. So let's go ahead and get this going. I'm going to set you guys right here. I'm going to take my handy dandy shovel that I have here that is covered in wood ash, and I'm just going to scoop some of this out into the pot just like this. Yes, it stinks. It's going to smell nasty. It's not going to smell the greatest, but it is okay. They're going to eat on it. They're going to love it, and they're going to be super happy. So I'm going to fill this all the way up to the top, so that way they'll have plenty of munch on, and also it'll give them enough room in here to really get into it and break it all up in that. And this way it'll make it easier for us to go from one thing to another. Well, not one thing to another, but from one tumbler to another. Alright, and that's done. And this is what the pot's going to look like once it's full. Now, I'm going to put the lid back on because that stuff is strong. Alright, now we're going to come over here to this one. I'm going to make a flat spot in this tumbler, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So as you guys can see, it's all ready, all right there. I'm going to just kind of push this all around here. Kind of get it all separated. We got worms in there. Alright. Good, good, good. Knock this off. Alright, now let's put our pot. Alright, so with this pot, I'm just going to set it down here lightly. Now I'm gonna flip you guys around and show you. There it is. It's gonna sit down in there and the worms are gonna crawl through those holes and go into that. Now we're gonna leave this shut for about 2 weeks. We won't mess with the pot or anything for the next 2 weeks because it's going to take them some time to go from the compost that's currently in the tumbler to that pot, so that way I can transplant them. Now we won't get, with this process, I do want to go ahead and say this now. With this process, you won't really necessarily get all the worms out of the tumbler. There will be a few stranglers that get left behind that you'll find as you're digging through the compost. But now we need to set up our other compost bin, so let's go ahead and do that. One more thing as well. Stay tuned, as in the end, I'm going to give you guys some great tips on what your ashes can be used for. Alright, so with our getting our other tumbler ready, what we'll need to do is, first things first, is add the compost into it, and then we're going to add some mulch into it, and then we're going to add some wood ash into it as well. Wood ash does a lot of great things, and like I said, if you stay tuned to the end, I'll go over all that with you. But let's go ahead and get all this stuff into the tumbler and get it ready. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and dump this in here. This will be the first thing we add in here. Alright. That is done. Now we're going to add the mulch. There we go. And now we're only going to add a little bit of this wood ash. There we go. Alright, now we're going to close it all up and we're going to give it a rotate. Alright, now I'm going to pop this back open, and this is what it's all going to look like once it's all mixed up. Now we're going to leave this shut for the next few days, and then once that's all done breaking down a little bit and we get the worms into the pot in one tumbler, we'll be able to move it to the other tumbler. So that's good for now. Now, let's talk something else. So, with our current compost kitchen scrap bucket empty, now what I'm going to do is fill it up with water, rinse it really good and out, and then take that water and pour it throughout our different plants, because the compost that's in there, when I go to rinse it out, it'll go onto the plants and that'll recompost to the plants, so it'll feed the plants. So it's all a great process when doing kitchen scraps in a bucket inside your home, because you get a lot of additional things from it. Once it's emptied, you rinse it out, you add it to one of your plants, and it's going to feed your plants. Yeah, it's not the same as compost tea, as it didn't sit there for a good 24 hours. But it still is putting that kitchen scraps and that into the plant. So another thing that is a great thing to do, and we'll kind of go over this at a later time, is adding your kitchen scraps into your garden bed. Now, some people will put a container in their garden bed and then add the kitchen scraps in that container to feed to the ground. Now, that is one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is just dig a hole inside of your garden in between plants and add that compost into that hole and then bury it back, and that'll be feeding the ground again. Now, especially if you have worms in your garden, which is always a great thing to have, because when they eat on the compost that's in the garden, they poop out that compost, and with them pooping it out, it's also an additional great fertilizer for your garden. So it's always a good thing to kind of go over to do that. So, but we'll go into a whole deep dive video into the different processes you can do and steps you can take to do that into your garden, because it's another great tool to do to amend your soil, because kitchen scraps is going to help bring in those worms. Those worms are going to help break down that compost, and it's going to re-fertilize that ground, which is a great thing to do. Now, we're pretty much all set up. We put our pot in there. We're going to wait the next 2 weeks. We'll come back later to it in the next 2 weeks. I'll show you guys what it'll look like after 2 weeks and show you what I'll do to move them from this tumbler to another. So that way you get the full dive into it. So now what we're going to go ahead and talk about is wood ash. So wood ash is ashes, pretty much. But did you ever think that wood ash is actually considered a good nitrogen for your soil? It is, matter of fact, especially if it's just wood that you've burned there. So we have a burn pile right up there where we do fires, we'll burn boxes and things like that. Yes, your cardboard boxes are part of your composting bin, as it's another part of it that is a brown that breaks down. That's a great fertilizer for the soil as well. But with this process, we burn the boxes and the wood, and then I go through and collect the wood ash. Now, there's several different things you can go about doing with your wood ash. One thing is you can go about spreading it throughout your garden. It'll help put the nitrogen into the ground, along with diverting pests out of the garden, because they don't like the wood ash. For some odd reason, it just doesn't. Now, if you're curious to know if it hurts your pollinators, it doesn't actually. It's one thing that they can kind of move around and still be able to get to that pollen and nectar through that wood ash. Now, I wouldn't ever go through and say, oh yeah, apply wood ash to your plants, because wood ash is technically a thick powder. So you wouldn't necessarily want to apply it onto your plants, just throughout the soil, on top of your mulch or whatever you have at the base of those plants, and it'll still be a good preservative for it. Now, another thing that's really good with wood ash is wood ash has just as much nitrogen in it, and it helps release the smells that compost can bring. So sometimes with the wood ash, I'll add it into our big compost bin, so that way it dilutes down on the smell, because as you all know, kitchen scraps over time do start to become really stinky. So wood ash really helps break that down. That's why we don't really have a big smell from our compost bins and that, because we use the wood ash, which is a really great thing as well. But that is going to be it, guys. That's pretty much your basics over the wood ash. It doesn't hold like thousands of things that it does. I mean, I'm sure it does a lot more than what I just mentioned, but we just won't do all that. We won't go all into that. But that is just your basic things that wood ash does. Now, we've already got our other tumbler set up. We're prepping our worms to be moved from one tumbler to another. Check it out. Did it. We're done. We are done. So now we're going to come back in 2 weeks, check to see how they're doing. And throughout the 2 weeks, every day, I'll come out here and check on it. So get ready, guys. Buckle up, and let's get through this next 2 weeks. Hi, welcome guys. So it's been about 6 days since we put our pot in here with the compost in here. We're gonna go ahead and flip you guys around and take a look to see how the worms are doing with their transferring into the pot. So let's take a look. Alright, so as you guys see here, the pot is in here, and if I lift, look at all those worms. And then if you look down here, you'll still see them going through to the bottom. So we're going to actually leave this in here for another 6 days to 7 days, so that way it's in there for a full 2 weeks. And then at 2 weeks, we'll move the pot from this container and dump it into this one over here. Now I'm going to quickly show you guys how this container is looking, since we have been turning it pretty promptly. As you guys can see, it's pretty bad in there, pretty stinky. Got all the compost, kitchen scraps in there with some mulch. So we've been turning this every day to make sure it's staying turned. And technically, it won't really break down too fast, because the worms aren't really in there like they are in this one tumbler. So in the next 7 days, we'll go back through here again and see how everything's doing, and if ever all the worms have moved into that pot, then what we'll do is move them from that tumbler over to the next tumbler, so that way we can start using the 1 tumbler's compost that's already broke down in it for starting seeds, transplanting plants, making compost tea, and pretty much whatever the works. Now while I'm out here, I really quick wanted to show you guys the big compost pile to show you how well it's breaking down. So here we are at our big compost pile. I won't worry about moving the fencing because I really don't need to get that close up into it. But as you can see, everything is definitely breaking down. We got mulch added in here. It's definitely a dark color, which is definitely great for us to see. Everything is turning and breaking down perfectly, which is awesome. Now we'll return back in 7 days to see if they have fully went into the pot, and if they have, we'll be able to move them over to the next tumbler. So that's going to be it, guys. See you in 7 days. Good morning, my Flower Garden Escape channel. So it's been about 6 to 7 days since we last checked on our worms. I'm really excited to be checking on it again with you, because today should be the day we move them from 1 tumbler to the next. So let's go ahead and get going and get this done. So as you can see, it definitely needs to be turned because we got plants sprouting out. But if I lift this, you can definitely see all the worms hanging out. So what I'm going to do is actually take the scoop that's down there. As you can see, there's worms down there. And we're going to dump this into the next tumbler. So let's go ahead and do that now. And we got to do it carefully because I don't want any of them falling out. As you can see, they're trying to squirm their way in there. So I'm going to open this up here. Got to undo this latch. And as you guys can see, everything's been really spun around here. And it's all really good. So we're going to go ahead and now dump this out. Get them in there. Knock this container out. And as you guys can see there's all the worms. So they're going to make themselves good and comfortable in there. I'm going to knock this out down here some more, because as you can see, there's some little guys down in there. So I'm actually going to leave this pot in here for a little bit, so that way they can find their way in there. And then now I got to get a shovel so that way we can scoop those clusters out that are right there. So, and not to worry, when we go to scoop them, we're not going to harm them any, because we're just going to gently scoop it out and put them in the next tumbler. So that way they can start breaking down that tumbler, and we can use the other tumbler for compost teas, making soil and things like that. There might be a few stranglers that get left behind in the tumbler, which happens because there's a lot of worms in there. So it's okay if we end up losing some, missing some, and there's still some in there, because they're just the stranglers. It'll be all right, I promise. I just need to get a shovel here. Now, we've already sprayed ashes through our garden to help put in the nitrogen back into the soil. I'm a good believer in our wood ash. It helps out a lot with adding additional fertilizers and nitrogen into the soil that we're making in our compost. So it's definitely good to use. The plants love it. The garden loves it. And we even have worms in our big garden as well. When we go to dig, we're always running into the worms. So we got our shovel, we got our little container we're going to scoop them into. Let's go ahead and get them out. And this is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to take the shovel and slightly push them up here. Not trying to hurt them any. But as you guys can see,
they're there. And we're gonna put this scoop in the container, and I'm gonna show you. Look at them all. They're like, Mama, we don't wanna move our home. We don't wanna move. And I think that is the gist of them. I'm gonna do one more scoop just to make sure I got them all here. Yeah, there's still some babies in there. And as you guys can see here, we got them all here. So I'm going to go ahead and put these guys into our new tumbler so that way they can really start breaking down the soil. So I'm going to go ahead and put these guys in here. We're going to lift this up. And one thing for sure with there we go. And one thing for sure with moving them in here, they're going to be able to break all that down. We won't spin it so that way we don't discombobulate them too much in there. This other tumbler that we just took them out of, I'll go ahead and rotate it out so that way these don't keep spinning. So let's go ahead and give it a twirl. Alright, and that should do it. Now let's take a look. And as you can, I think there's probably going to be thousands of them in there. I'm probably going to do a secondary pot to get more of the worms out. So that way we get majority of them out. Alright, so I refilled the pot. We're going to put this back in here for another 2 weeks. So that way I can make sure I get a lot of them out. I normally only do this process about once just to get them fully out, but looks like there's a lot more in this one than it was in the other one. So we're going to let this sit for another 2 weeks and then come back and check on it. But while we have that in here, we're going to now take this full tray of eggs and the carton itself and throw it in our big compost. So that way it adds to it, because you can use eggshells and cardboard in your compost as well, as it's a good fertilization into the breakdown process of compost. So we're going to go ahead and add this in here, and that'll be that of our composting. Alright, and there we go. It's all covered up and buried, and it's set to go. So now we're going to let this sit, and here soon we'll be able to start, once we get piled up and big enough, we'll start to be able to use this compost pile as well for soil. So we've done our composting. I've showed you guys how I transition my worms from one tumbler to another. I also really quick want to show you guys something. Before I totally let y'all go, to leave off on a good note, as upon checking here, we have our eggplants. Our eggplants are doing great, as you guys can see. There's a few holes from where some worms have kind of munched down, but we've added our pesticides in that to help get those gone. But now I'm going to go ahead and end our video on this amazing treat here. Take a look. Look at that eggplant, guys. Look at it. It looks good. And then look at this one right here. He's just so big. I always love coming out and seeing what's new producing out here in the garden. It's always great to see. I just love it. It's glorious to see what we're getting out of our garden. To know that we're getting a lot of health benefits out of our garden. It's really great. Let me tell you, there's no feeling like it. But that is going to be it, guys. Here soon we're going to be launching a full tour over our garden, so that way you can see what we got going on for our fall and winter crops, as we're still getting them put in there. So that's going to be it, guys. So until next time, forget to hit that like and subscribe and leave us a comment down below, and I'll catch you guys later.